Well, are you kidding me? Now everything's down to race. We know who is most likely to need this vaccine, but they're not going to get it. And they're not going to get it because of the color of their skin, and they're not going to get it because they're white, and they're not going to get it because of their income level, because they're white. Listen on, it's amazing.
The vaccine just today approved. We should be rejoicing in this. And yet many Americans are reluctant to take the vaccine. Why? Well, it's not all superstition. There are rational reasons to be skeptical, to ask questions. There's never in history been a successful vaccine for any variety of the coronavirus. The last one that scientists developed for SARS proved too dangerous to bring to market. Nor has any vaccine ever been developed as quickly as this one. The only attempt that came close was the mumps vaccine back in 1967, and that took 4 years. This took months. The authorities assure us that this new vaccine is completely safe, and of course we want to believe that badly. On the other hand, it's not crazy to wonder. You may have seen video of that nurse in Chattanooga yesterday passing out cold after getting her shot. You may have seen the press conference on Tuesday in San Antonio, where a healthcare worker received a fake vaccination on camera. He got the needle in the arm, but he didn't actually get a dose. The hospital conceded that's what happened, but never explained it. So it's fair to have questions. You are not a conspiracy nut for wanting answers. On the other hand, rushed development and a clumsy rollout do not fully explain many people's reluctance to take this drug. The worry goes deeper than that. The concern isn't simply the vaccine, it's the people in charge of the vaccine and their basic moral rottenness. Americans understand that many of our leaders really don't care about them. They don't care about human beings in general. They are ideologues. They're religious fanatics who worship their secular gods, money, power, wokeness. Whether their policies help or hurt individuals doesn't seem of great interest to them. These are the people who removed police from poor neighborhoods because it made them feel less guilty about their own pampered lives and their own ill-gotten wealth. As a result of that decision, many Americans died, including small children, but they kept doing it. They never apologized. Human suffering seemed irrelevant to them. It was the theory that mattered. Unfortunately, some of these very same people, the worst in our already unimpressive professional class, are now in charge of the coronavirus vaccine, and that should make you nervous. Tonight, officials at the CDC are debating how to distribute the vaccine, who gets it first, and on the basis of what criteria. That decision will, to some extent, determine who lives and who dies. It's a big decision, and it shouldn't be complicated. According to the CDC's own models, the way to save the most Americans is to give the vaccine to frontline healthcare workers first, and then to the elderly, meaning people over the age of 65. Older people are by far the most vulnerable, as we now know well. Every other age group has a survival rate of over 99.9%. That's why in Britain, authorities are getting the vaccine to the elderly as quickly as they can. But in this country, a panel of ideologues at the CDC has decided that the elderly should not be at the front of the line. The center's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices has made a different determination. And the reasoning is simple. Old people in this country are too white to save. Now that sounds shocking because it is shocking, but they put it in writing. The CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee unanimously approved recommendations last month from a doctor called Kathleen Dooling. According to Dooling's presentation, it is true that more lives would be saved if the elderly received priority access to the vaccine. But here's the problem. Quote, racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults aged 65 and older. Therefore, the elderly should not be a top priority. According to the CDC's panel, another group, those officially classified as, quote, non-healthcare essential workers, should get the vaccine first. Well, why is that? Quote, racial and ethnic minority groups are disproportionately represented in many essential industries, end quote. In other words, it's entirely racial. They're making the decision based on race. Kathleen Dooling's presentation concluded that doling out life-saving medicine on the basis of skin color would, quote, mitigate health inequities. Of course, it would kill people, and she effectively concedes that. But the people it would kill come from a disfavored race, so it's not a big deal. It's been a very long time since anyone close to what we would consider the mainstream has endorsed eugenics. That's exactly what that is. It's eugenics. But suddenly it's everywhere. Earlier this month, the New York Times, supposedly our greatest newspaper, interviewed a leading expert on medical ethics and vaccination at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a man called Harold Schmidt. Harold Schmidt advised the CDC, quote, older populations are whiter. Society is structured in a way that enables them to live longer. Instead of giving additional health benefits to those who already have more of them, we can start to level the playing field a bit. Level the playing field. That means intentionally causing people's deaths because they're the wrong color. When was the last time you heard someone say something like that out loud in this country? Probably not since around 1945. That's when they all agreed that letting certain people die because of their race was bad public policy, not to mention evil. But suddenly our leaders have forgotten that lesson. It's like the Second World War never happened. In the same New York Times piece that quotes Harold Schmidt, yet another doctor makes a similar point. His name is Mark Lipsitch. He's an epidemiologist at Harvard. Here's why he thinks teachers should not be included in the now favored category of non-healthcare essential workers. Quote, teachers have middle-class salaries, are very often white, and they have college degrees. In other words, wrong color, not essential. Is the hair on anyone else's arm standing up? What the hell is going on? Talk like that from the people in charge makes the population highly paranoid and fearful about the future, and it should. In California, the governor has already announced that the state will distribute medicine based on how people look.
Experts in safety, as well as experts looking at equity and looking at the distribution from a geriatric perspective, and looking at distributions, again, along the spectrum of making sure Black and brown communities disproportionately are benefited because of the impact they have felt disproportionately because of COVID-19.
So certain ethnicities will get the vaccine first because of their ethnicity, says the governor of California. And it doesn't matter if that policy winds up killing more people or is not based in science, because it's not based in science. In fact, maybe that's the point. It'll level the playing field. In Oregon, the head of the public health department, Rachel Banks, has made the same commitment. If you want the vaccine, you had better not be white. Quote, we have a variety of ways to ensure there's equitable distribution, both geographically and particularly focused on communities of color who've seen unfair disproportionate impact from COVID-19. To get a little more specific, Oregon's health authority has released a statement that promises that, quote, Black, Indigenous, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Pacific Islander, and tribal communities will have, quote, equitable access to vaccination, meaning first dibs. In a world like this, where even vaccines are distributed on the basis of skin color, it's no wonder that many have decided to transition to a new race. Why wouldn't they? It doesn't pay to be in your old race. In Oregon, a group of Slavic Americans has petitioned the state's coalition of communities of color for membership, and it was granted, so they're no longer white. Apparently neither is Nancy Pelosi. She was one of the first people in the country to get the vaccine, so Pelosi is now a person of color as well as essential, which at this point are basically the same thing. That is the consensus now all over the country from our leaders.
Just over half of states with publicly available plans for vaccine distribution have at least one mention of incorporating racial equity.
There's a great amount of mistrust.
Vicky Hernandez runs a community center here.
Black and brown communities primarily make up essential workers, and they have been disproportionately affected by COVID, and so for that reason, they should be prioritized.
This is insanity. When you are planning to distribute life-saving medicines on the basis of race, not on the basis of science, but on the basis of race, you are by definition dividing the country more deeply and more permanently, really, than you could under any circumstances.